sound coming on the wind, changing hearts and minds, healing brokenness. I feel a generation breaking through despair. I hear a generation full of faith declare, and our song it will be, out of the darkness we will rise and sing. He is faithful, He is glorious, and He is Jesus, and all my hope is in Him. He is He has paid the highest price. He has proven His great love for us. Yeah. We will praise Him with our lives and proclaim our love for Him. And proclaim our love for Him. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, and that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, and that is who you are. Oh, Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, and that is who you are. Oh, you are everything, Lord. That's who you are. That's who you are. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper. It's who you are. Jesus, it's who you are. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. 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 The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. And his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in
Hi, I'm Steve Bradley, pastor here at City Life Church, and I'm here with three friends of mine who we're going to have some discussion tonight. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on in our nation, right in the middle of a pandemic, obviously, but a lot of things shift and change with the flow of what's going on. And so right now, we're going to have a discussion just in regard to some of the things that we're seeing a lot of focus on, and it has been for many years, but I think it's really important for us to talk about this issue of racism, prejudice, bias, those kinds of things of what's going on in our nation, and it's good for us to have this conversation. So I just want to introduce the three guys who are with me here today. We have Miguel Stansbury right here. Over on the other side of him, Jimmy Williams, and then we have Napoleon Parker over here. And these guys are all police officers, of course, but more than that, they're great men, and I respect them highly and appreciate them so much and for their friendship. And we go back probably 11 and a half years, I'm thinking, when I showed up at the department and kind of hung around there, and eventually they decided to do the badge thing on me to be a reserve officer. So these guys were there when I got there, and all of them have been very kind to me through the process, because a little interesting being a pastor and a police officer during those years. Then once that program ended, becoming a chaplain in the community and so forth. So we've spent a lot of time together over the years, working together on the streets and then just having conversations. And so I thought it would be really cool if we got together and just had a discussion tonight, just kind of go through a few thoughts and allow them to speak through some ideas. I was just thinking, guys, about this when I was driving here today. What an incredible thought to think of history, go back 400 years, right? We go back 400 years when slavery was introduced to our country, and it was accepted and became part of life in our country. And that went on for like 225 years, if my memory serves me correct. So we, back in, I think, 1619, and then all the way up to, was it 1865, I think, or somewhere in there, where finally then slavery was abolished. And but unfortunately, the things when regards to the racism, all this stuff, being able to have discrimination was still legal in the sense you could still discriminate, which was unfortunate, because I'm thinking, looking back and reviewing history, that went on for 100 years. And then we had the Civil Rights Movement back in 1964 that began to shift some things and bring things in, some attention to that. But that's 55 years ago, and here we're still sitting today, and we're talking about things that the needle hasn't moved very far. I mean, we've seen some success in this, but there's still a long ways to go. And so I just have a real heart to connect and try to do what I can. And I know you guys are certainly there. And I know for Miguel and Napoleon, you guys have a perspective that I want to hear personally, because I'm in this learning mode. And so am I going to stumble a few times and maybe ask the wrong question or do something wrong trying to help in my community? I probably will, but hopefully we're able to kind of do some stuff together. And so in that process, I'm just asking everybody that's out there, please be open-minded in this. And I get this as somebody who's thought through this process, and I've have made the mistake of thinking everything is a certain way, because I'm coming at it from a white kid who grew up in this area. I grew up here, and I never knew anything about this because it wasn't a part of my life. I got out of bed every morning. I didn't think about what was going to happen, that day based on somebody's bias, and that wasn't a part of my life. And so I'm sitting here today learning a lot of things. And so I just encourage people to be open-minded in the process of what we talk about today and what these guys have to say. I think it's really important. And then continue the process in that. And so I just want to start off, I think, with the first thing was just, again, understanding racism is taught. And that's the unfortunate thing, that people continue through the generations, for whatever reason, they teach their kids about this and that these people are bad, or they're a problem, or this, or whatever it is. And so it continues through the generations. I guess my question is, has there ever been a generation since all of this has been going on that has moved the needle or been successful in addressing this? If there has, what did that look like? Or if they haven't done that, why not? And what's going on with that? So just kind of open that to you guys.
Well, before you answer the question, I just want to preface this with, you said a lot of things, and it's important to go into this understanding that there are so many things that can be covered, so many narratives, so many different branches of this topic, that we could not possibly cover it all. So it's important to go into this conversation knowing that. And then you said a couple of things. I mean, you mentioned some really good things about history, right? And you mentioned like the 400 years, and then leading up to the Civil Rights Movement in 1964-65 era. And that's important to take into consideration too when you're talking about this stuff, because yes, slavery was a long time ago, but the people's inherent right to vote has been suppressed and oppressed for far longer than that, all the way up until, like you said, 1964-65. So it's very fresh in our minds. That's 16 years before I was born. That's not a long time. So it's important.
I was a little kid.
Yeah. So exactly. Yeah. It's important to understand that it's fresh in our minds when we go about talking about this, because people tend to dismiss it as like something that happened so long ago, but it's not. So I just wanted to preface that with that. We won't be able to cover the whole topic of everything. We'll do our best to kind of give our perspectives, but it's important to understand that there's so many things that we can't cover right here.
Yeah.
One thing I like that you said is listen and learn. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the mode I'm in, same as you.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate that a lot of people don't have good friends like I have, like Miguel Napoleon here. And I'm lucky that I can sit down and speak with my heart and talk to the guys and say, hey, tell me exactly why, when, and all these things. And I didn't understand. At one time, I didn't understand, and it was, you can say I was naive, but the same thing as you. I woke up every day, put on my shoes, didn't have a worry in the world besides being late to work, and that's about it. I had no clue that there could be other struggles or other obstacles in the way, and so if everybody that's listening to this today can do the same thing that Steve says, just listen and learn. And I think for me, it broadened my education, broadened things I know, and I'm hoping I'm getting to the point where I understand, where I can be not change who I am, but understand where other people come from, because it's not all about me. It's about everybody trying to stick together and be together.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that you said is, you're probably going to say things wrong or say the wrong thing, and you're maybe worried about offending African Americans, right? Mm-hmm. Well, of the messages or the conversations that I've had with a lot of white people is just that. Well, I don't know if I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to offend someone. Am I going to make this person mad? Am I saying the right thing? Just know, you are going to say the wrong thing at some point, but that's okay, because you should be saying whatever's on your mind, whatever's on your heart. Because at the end of the day, if you're saying something, we're having a conversation. And that's been the problem. We haven't been having conversations. We haven't been discussing these things because it's uncomfortable for certain people. And that's fine. But we can't use that as an excuse anymore. And we've got to have these tough conversations. And you've got to be okay with knowing that you may say the wrong thing, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So kind of back to the question in the sense of, and I appreciate what you guys are all saying, has there ever been a generation that seemed to have kind of figured out, hey, we need to do something, and they started doing something at some point? in history has there ever been that? I mean, we had the civil rights movement, but what?
I don't think it's ever ended. I think from the time of Reconstruction after, post Civil War, I think that struggle has been even before that. It's always been there, right? And your question was, has any generation ever moved the needle? That term, right? And it's funny that we use that term because we were just talking, I think earlier we were talking about the Selma marches, right? And which we alluded to, talking about the civil rights movement in 1964-65. And depicted in that movie that we were just talking about, they actually use that term, move the needle, right? When they were talking about the dialogue between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and who's moved the needle more for African Americans in the country, right? And I say yes. I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here right now, together like we are if no one moved the needle. So the needle's moved, but is that enough is what people are asking. Because if you go back, it's not like those things didn't happen. They didn't happen overnight, and they didn't happen without struggle. The folks in the civil rights movement had to force the hand of the U.S. government. There were too many people that were just remaining silent because it didn't affect them, I believe. And it wasn't until they had to force the hand of the U.S. government and kind of paint them in a corner that they did get the needle moved, because it was always, okay, well, we did this, just wait on those rights and we'll get to that when we can, which is not the right answer. And then in this generation, just today, I'm looking at, people are like, what good is the protests that are going on today? I mean, a lot of people don't condone violence. I don't want to even get into that topic right now. Because there's so many things to be said about that. But people will say, well, what's coming out of these protests across the country? Well, today, NASCAR is one of the least integrated sports, right? And it's known that there are a lot of bigots in NASCAR. They just banned the Confederate flag at all NASCAR events. The Marine Corps just banned the Confederate flag on their posts. The Navy's looking at the same thing, right? And that's a flag that has been a symbol of racism, since the Civil War. Yeah. And it's been used as a symbol of hatred. For that to take that long, for people to ban
that's my question. Why did it take so long?
Right.
But I'm glad it's happened.
But those are the things that are coming from people protesting, and now it's coming to light, and now it's a viral thing that are the racial injustices that are still here and still present today. So people have moved the needle, and it needs to go even further.
And why is it taking so long? Because the majority of people that are the oppressors, they're the majority. And the minority, it's hard for the minority to move the needle. We can't make the oppressors not oppress.
Sure.
Right? So it's the majority that needs to conform. And for so long, there have been a lot of moderates who have seen it, they've been a part of it, and they haven't said anything. They've sat silent, which is just as bad as almost the oppressors. They're watching it happen. It's in front of their face, and they've chosen for so many years to be silent, and silence is not moving the needle.
Right.
So until the majority conforms, that needle's not going to move much more than what it is right now.
And
it's taken this new generation, like you said, it's taken this new generation to not only move the needle, they're kicking the door in. Yeah. They are kicking the door in. I mean, could you ever imagine there would be a global pandemic and now this? Where before, and we've seen it, we've seen a lot of police brutality. We've seen all these racial situations that have happened. People are upset for a short amount of time. Then they go on with their life. Now we're in a global pandemic to where now we're forced to sit down, look at these issues, and actually take action. It's the perfect storm.
Yeah.
And you can argue that, like you just said about the majority, you can argue that each time the needle has moved, it's been because of the fact, I think, and I don't want to misquote Martin Luther King during that whole time, but he wanted the press, the publicity. He was nonviolent, but he knew that, and he used some term and something to the effect of tugging on the ethical sensibility of the majority, or the white people in America. It isn't until then that the needle will move, and that's ultimately what happened, with the Selma marches. You can argue that each time we've had progress, it's because that majority has seen the oppression like firsthand, you know, in your face kind of thing.
Good point. Yeah.
And I think the social media and things like that, now people who normally wouldn't have information are seeing the information also. Back in the 60s and earlier, the newspaper would put something out, but not everybody in the world would see it. And so now I think the word is spread and it's global. Everybody is seeing what's going on. So I think people are able to almost, it's not firsthand, but they're seeing it live or on TV. And so things are easier to believe when you can see it instead of hearing it. So
Yeah. I just wanted you to know, Miguel, the reason I'm sitting so far away from you, your arms are huge. I just noticed that. And so I'm like,
You know, you just do what
I've been flexing here the whole time.
Aren't your arms getting sore, Jimmy?
Oh, I'm over here, I can't
just be
breathe.
you, Steve.
Well, that's what I'm being.
You just
I'm
be you.
being me. So that's good. Hey, so I wanted to ask you two guys, Miguel and Napoleon, just
So you're signaling us out. Okay.
I am seeing. No, it's doubling
Doubling
it
it
out.
out.
Okay.
Your experience of your own lives as civilians, where you've been mistreated in some way out in public or wherever because of the color of your skin. Give us a couple things. I think this is important to people.
Sure.
Because white people, we don't experience that, right?
Right.
That's just a fact.
And you know why we don't? Because between he and I, we've got stories for days, right?
Yeah.
You know why we don't really talk about it? Because the times we have tried, we've been minimized. We've been told, we've been called liars. We've been told that we're just blowing things out of proportion for attention. We've completely been shut down. And that's why we really haven't even spoken out about a lot of these things. Because generally when we're having these conversations with white people, their initial reaction is, no, that doesn't happen. I've never seen that. Well, of course you haven't. Why would you see
Yeah,
it?
you wouldn't.
And they're so afraid of being labeled as being a racist that they're acknowledging what has happened to us, that they won't even entertain that could possibly happen.
So Jimmy and I are asking.
Yes.
So-
I think it's important. He said something important, right? And it's because it's uncomfortable for people to hear that it actually happens and they don't want to believe it.
Sure.
So a lot of times, and there are a lot of things that African Americans do that we were taught, you know, or we were inherently taught, you know, without being, you know, like aware of it, that we do. And one of the things is maybe changing the way we talk, or maybe not talking about certain experiences as to not make people uncomfortable.
Oh, okay.
And you're seeing a lot of that being reversed right now because people are saying, you know, it's time to not be silent, right? And Jimmy is in a unique position because we vacationed together, we've done things together, and it wasn't until Jimmy actually saw those things firsthand that he was like, oh my God. And he never realized that, I mean, he probably knew it happened in the world, you know, but he never saw it firsthand until, you know, we were on our motorcycle rides and we were in the middle of nowhere, you know, where we weren't welcomed.
Give us just maybe a touch on a story that you're talking about right
Well,
there.
and I will.
Hold on.
But
Well,
the other,
let me finish my initial point. When you hear these stories coming from African Americans, listen. Don't minimize. Don't act like it didn't happen. Just listen. Listen, absorb it, and maybe share it with whoever you need to share it with when they are saying that when these things don't happen. Go ahead.
I could even tell a story about you guys come from me, things that I've witnessed.
Okay, well, let
We've
me
all
go
been-
first.
I'm just saying.
Go ahead.
I mean, do you guys remember when we were on our motorcycle trip and we were down south and it was us, Tom, and I think, was it Bremer with us? Anyways, we
The
stopped.
names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Yes,
That's right.
Yes, and so those are different names. Anyways, we were at that small little place in a small town towards Mount St. Helens. That's the best way to say it. And we went to this little restaurant. We went inside to get something to eat. Remember the guy who went like this?
Yes.
Now you know where I'm at.
Yes.
So we're in there, and we're the first people to get in. There's like 5 of us guys. We're having fun. We're just on our motorcycle. We wanted to stop, get something to eat. We're the first ones in there. We're the first ones to sit down. First, I forgot to say, is the lady that was there, she saw us walk in, and she disappeared. Poof. Didn't know where she went. So we're standing at the front counter for a while. And then some guy yells out from the kitchen, just find a seat type deal. So we go find a seat. We all go sit down. Nobody came to ask us if we wanted a drink or anything like that. And then a couple more customers come in. Maybe 2 sets of other customers come in. That lady was right there in a second, grabbed those customers, sat them down, and they had their drinks before she even came to our table and said hello. So I actually, oblivious, thinking the lady just forgot about us. And so I'm kind of, hey, hello. And so I go over there and talk to them, and she comes over and gets us some drinks. Fine. So we were sitting there for so long, we pretty much knew what we were going to order already. So we just got our drinks, ordered our food real quick because we wanted to get back on our motorcycles and get out of here. And so we ordered all our stuff, and we're sitting there and no food, no food, no food. And the other tables got served, no food, until I finally had to go up there and say, what's going on? And we ended up getting our food, but I'm not joking. We got our food. It was cold. Like, it was sitting on the table up on the tray real quick. We got our food. It was cold. Never came back to give us drinks or anything. So I don't even think anybody ate all their food, because I'm guessing it was just sitting on the tray. We all had hamburgers and fries, this simple stuff that normally is easy and quick to cook. You get in 5 to 10 minutes. But we'd probably sat there for 40 minutes before we got it, and it was cold. And I'm still thinking, oh my God, this girl must be new. But then after we left and I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, I put it together. And at that moment, I probably didn't realize it until I've spent more time with these guys and I started seeing something else. Then I saw something else happen. And then it finally clicked to me where, wow, this is really happening. And where I live. And you don't think stuff like that happens in Washington. And I've lived other places before, and I've seen it plain view in other places. And when I came here, it was the first time I've ever seen it that day. And that was probably about 10 years ago.
And that's just a mild example, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's important to point out that I grew up in South Georgia, was born in South Georgia, grew up in Metro Atlanta area, and did live other places, including like overseas for 6 years, because my father was in the military, but spent most of my life in Georgia. I probably have completely different experiences than the rest of these guys, yet Miguel grew up, in mostly Washington, some in California, right, in the West Coast. It's important to note that even though geographically we come from really different places, we still have some of the same experiences. And this is a phenomenon across the United States, is when you talk to another black person, we automatically connect because we've been taught the same things family-wise. And we've had similar experiences in life,
That's interesting.
and it's an interesting phenomenon. No matter where you go, there are some outliers, of people that probably were raised a little bit differently for life circumstances. But in the most part, 90-something% of black folks would have the same experiences. Me, personally, I've been called the N-word more times than I can count. Both civilian in a military uniform and in a police uniform still. I've been warned that I was going to be assaulted for dating a white girl. I've been kept a secret from a girl's family because she couldn't tell her family that we were dating, things like that. I've been shown the Confederate flag, as a warning,
Sure.
not to come in some place, or that they're watching me or something like that. We don't make these things up, right? And then the most visceral thing that I can think of, and there's a lot, right? And I can't even I can't even sit here and pinpoint all of them. And the most visceral thing that I can think of, and I was just talking to my sister about this the other day because my dad brought it up because we had all forgot about it. And I'll preface this with saying, sometimes things like what Jimmy explained, people are like, well, maybe that's just coincidence. Maybe that person was having a bad day. Maybe it was bad service, right? Well, when you have a lot of coincidences, what is that called? It's called a pattern, right? So you can't be oblivious to it. But back to my story, the most visceral memory I had, right, was in college. I think I was I was probably 19 at the time, right? And I went to school in northern Georgia in a small town, and it's just north of Forsyth County, which Forsyth County, Georgia is very popular because Oprah went there because they were trying to ban black people from the entire county.
Wow.
And Oprah went there and confronted him and had a big show about it, right? So this is up in that area. But I was pulled over, I was leaving the Walmart parking lot. I was pulled over right when I was leaving the parking lot because I didn't have my seatbelt on yet and was in the process of putting it on. I'm in a military uniform. I went to a military school. And the guy gets my, stuff and everything. And then come to find out my license was suspended, right? I didn't know because I got a ticket when I was like 16, just got my license. My dad was like, oh, I'll pay it. And he forgot, never really thought about it. Okay, whatever. But he arrested me, right? And, maybe that's their procedure, right? Because now I'm in law enforcement, I understand.
Yes.
Sometimes people get a physical arrest, sometimes they get a citation. But they arrested me, right? And they put me in handcuffs, took me to the jail. But one thing that they did was they shackled me, hands and feet, and shackled me and had me. And it was almost like they paraded me around the station and people were laughing. Some of the officers in there were laughing and pointing and whatever. So to me, I knew that wasn't the proper procedure for them to do. They fingerprinted me, do all that stuff, right? And now that I'm in law enforcement, I'm like, when would you ever shackle somebody hands and feet for a suspended driving citation, even if that's a physical arrest where you book them?
Right.
I know that now, but I didn't know that at the time. And the only reason I felt like it was wrong, but I still didn't really get it. And it wasn't until I called my dad, I'm like, hey, can somebody bail me out, whatever. One of my advisors from the college came and bailed me out because my family's too far away. But when I told my dad about it, he was livid. He blew up. And I didn't understand until he was explaining to me, what had happened to me. And it stuck with me still to this day. And it's one of the reasons amongst many that I'm in the profession that I'm in today. So that's kind of one of the things that I remember.
No, I appreciate that. Well, you have a Confederate flag story, or were you thinking of a different one?
You can pick. So I'll bring it back to when I was in high school. So my sophomore year in high school on the football team, we played our rival was Eatonville, and which I had never even heard of before.
On the way to Mount Rainier, right?
Exactly. Before, high school.
Yeah.
And it's a country town in the middle of nowhere. Literally, it's at the bottom of Mount Rainier. And I've heard stories about how racist this town was and everything like that. Like the old movies where the town shuts down and there's signs in the window that says "Gone to the game" and all that. That's how that town was. And when you go into the town, and this is going to sound completely corny and made up, but it's the truth. When you go into the town, you see these signs on all these old buildings like it's a movie. And you see the glow of the stadium because all the lights are off. They do it on purpose. They cut all the lights in the business off. They shut the street lights off so you see nothing but the glow of the stadium when you go in. Well, at least they did back then. So we get there, and the entire stadium is packed. The track is completely lined with people from Eatonville. And then the locker room is in a separate building from the field. So you have to walk down this pathway to get to the locker room. And as we were walking down to the locker room, they're lined with people from Eatonville. And they're yelling, "Nigger, nigger, nigger," super quiet, just so the players can hear it, because we were a predominantly black school. And this is what these are kids. So we go to the locker room, change, come back out, same thing on the way out. After the game is over, and of course we got destroyed because the focus is just clearly not there when you're going through this stuff. Oh. And when we're getting hit out of bounds and the ball would go into the track, they're yelling all these crazy slurs and all this. So anyways, we get on the bus, the game's over, and the people surround our bus, and they're rocking our bus. Literally rocking our bus, screaming all these crazy things. Long story short, the state patrol had to come and escort us out. 5 cars, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and 1 on the side. Wow. To block the other oncoming traffic road off. So that's how we got out of Eatonville. So that was like the first time I really experienced it as a sophomore in high school. What are you, 14, 15, something like, whatever that is. So then another time on the football team, I think it was the same year. So we're playing Orting, and that's like in the bottom valley of Puyallup. And some little girls were walking, and this is before the game, so we're in the stands before we even went to the locker room to get changed for the game. We had just gotten off the bus, and this little girl was talking to her 3 friends and goes, "Hey, I need a quarter to call my mom." That's how old I am, because there was payphones, there was no cell phones. And she needed a quarter to call her mom on the payphone, and her 2 friends said she didn't have one. So I go, "Here you go," and she goes, "Nigger," and they took off running. So you talk about racism being learned. This girl's too young to even really know what that means or even understand it. And this is what she said and ran. So that's crazy. But the Confederate flag you're talking about, and trust me, we can go on days for this. The Confederate flag, we went to Leavenworth for the lighting of the Christmas tree. So
the whole town.
the whole town's there and all that stuff. So we see the Christmas tree, it's snowing. I'm like, we gotta get out of here. It was cold. You know, I don't deal with the cold too well. So anyways, we hightailed it out of there after the tree got lit. And then we ended up stopping in a small town between Leavenworth and I-90. I can't remember the name of the town. Anyways, we stop at this gas station to get gas. And there's no one there except one SUV. It's a black Tahoe. And there's a guy out there pumping gas. So we pull up right behind, because our gas tanks are obviously on the same side. I pull up behind, and I got my daughter in the car, I got her friend in the car, and my wife and I. Pull up behind the car, and as I, get my wallet and whatnot to go pump the gas, the guy, he's got the gas pump in his truck. He walks around the back, and he wipes off the area by the rear windshield wiper. And we're like, what is he doing? Because we're thinking he's just going to clear the snow off the entire window.
Sure.
He didn't. He just cleared off a small section, and in that section was a Confederate flag. So he wipes off the Confederate flag to show me, looks at us, and then goes inside. Goes inside and doesn't even come back out until we're gone. His wife and kids, his wife, son, and daughter, who were probably about that big, were in the store while he was pumping gas. He goes in the store while they're coming out, and he made them wait outside while he stayed in the store until we came out. So for my daughter, that was the first time she really had to experience racism, because she's not dark. So a lot of people don't even know she's black. So she really hasn't had a lot of the experiences that we are sharing right now. So that was really her first time, seeing racism right in front of your face. So imagine that.
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean, I appreciate it, because I think people need to hear this stuff.
People have called the police on me in uniform.
Oh, I know.
You know what I mean?
That's not uncommon.
That is not uncommon. Multiple of our officers, black officers, had the police called on them in uniform.
And
Plus,
one
it's not uncommon.
time I was actually with another officer on this same call, and a lady called up and said, there's a black man in my front yard with a gun. And so our dispatch dispatched it out. And I'm like, radio, that's me and my partner.
Yeah.
And we had shirts that said police
Yeah.
on the front and the back.
And the officer he was with was in full uniform.
Yes.
Yeah.
Full uniform. I was in tack gear, but it said police, but this officer had a full uniform on.
But here's the issue with some of those things, right? And you say racism is taught. Sometimes it's overtly taught, and passed down.
Sure.
But what people are bringing to light now is the thing about systemic racism, institutionalized racism, the way in which America was founded and structured, right, is you inherently teach racist practices, and it's inherently embedded. And that's what we are trying to come together to root out. And it's not until you have conversations like this that you can actually talk about those things, because we've talked about some things that that people have said and done and not really realize that they're perceived as racist, right? But here's the other problem. This is the problem that we have, with trying to educate, friends of ours, associates, coworkers, whatever you want to call them. People they hear about instances where we're in full police uniforms, marked patrol cars, and we experience racism while we're doing the job. And instead of them standing up and doing what's right, they go, that's really funny that happened to you. Oh, that's bad. And then they just go on with their life, right? So that is what this generation is trying to fix. And that's why people are so upset. And that's why they're calling on people to have these conversations and to speak out. Go beyond your comfort level now and talk about these things.
And that's what it is. I think most people are uncomfortable and they don't know how to respond to it.
Yeah.
And if we can get those conversations opened and they understand that Napoleon would love it if I stuck up for him. Miguel would love it if I stuck up for him.
Absolutely.
But then being an officer, being all class A type guy.
You did stick up for us. Tell that story.
Which one? I can't remember. There's been so many.
We actually spoke about it earlier today. I remember when we were discussing the whole issues when the light bulbs really turned on for you at work, and you defended us by just basically telling people to do their research, and the backlash you got for that.
Is that a couple years ago? Mm-hmm. So I'm lucky because I can sit and we were partners for a while, and we would be able to go in each other's office. And 2 years ago, when we were having some issues, same type of thing, maybe 3 years ago, and I like to go in his office and kind of be like a soundboard and, hey, explain to me. I'm not understanding. Okay,
Well, he had that awesome stuff in his office. It was a good place.
Right.
To hang out. The fireplace and all.
And
that.
I'm not gonna lie, when things first came out, and something we can get into later, like when the Black Lives Matter, when that slogan came out. I mean, I don't know, whenever it came out 3-4 years ago, and I'll admit I felt like it was like punching me in the face. Like, why are you saying that? And everybody would, the cliche everybody says, well, all lives matter. And I was one of those people, and I'm saying it too. And that was mainly a lot of our talks. And we can get into that in a little while. But remember when Colin Kaepernick took the knee? And that was our main discussion. And it pissed me off. I mean, my dad was in the military for 26, 28 years or something like that. And I was an Army kid, and I grew up and was in base. And when we were kids, when flag went up, we all had to stand outside the house, and everybody. And when you're on base, everybody had to stop. And when you're on base and all that stuff. And then
the movie theater.
If you're in school, like sometimes when some school starts early, the flag was at. Sometimes it was at 7, and sometimes it was at 8 o'clock, depends on the day. And if we're in school and it's 8 o'clock, we all had to stand up in school, stop whatever we're doing. If we're in the field, and if we were walking and someone caught us walking, we would get in trouble.
Sure.
So the flag is a very honorable thing to me, and it makes me think of my dad. So that's my big thing. And so for me, I would never take a knee, but I had to ask him, I'm like, what is this all about? And so he explained it to me in terms that I could understand, and just broke it down. And at this point, this is the first time I listened, because all I was doing was reading headlines, reading the captions, just seeing things, just seeing pictures, and not reading articles, and asking why did he take a knee? Explain it. He, when Miguel explained it all, it was like, wow.
And showed you the video.
And showed me the video. So one day I decided to, and everything just kind of went ding, ding, ding. And I was like, you know what? That's honorable. So I posted something on Facebook, and all it said is something of the sort, I would never take a knee, but has anybody watched the full video and the explanation on why Colin Kaepernick took a knee? And I said, and I attached the video. I go, watch this video and see if it changes your mind or enlightens you to understand why he did it. And I said something like, please don't respond unless you watch the video. And I think I said, if you want to talk, I'll talk to you in person or something like that. No joke. Within hours, I was having, you can call it hate mail or whatever, but people I know. People that were my friends and colleagues or whatever, and people I went to school with were just putting all this hate stuff on there. Like quick. Like not even enough time for them to even read the articles, because it was like, I can't remember how many minutes it was.
14 minutes.
14 minutes. Like within 5 minutes I was getting all this stuff. I'm like, wow. And I couldn't believe it. And I didn't say anything derogatory. I didn't put my opinion down. I didn't say, all I did is challenged my Facebook friends. Hey, watch this video and see if it changes something for you. That was it. And within minutes, I was just getting stuff. So it was kind of disheartening in a minute for me, because I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it how quickly people changed just for me putting something out.
Yeah. So let's go there, you guys. So explain why the statement Black Lives Matter is important, and why the statement All Lives Matter isn't helpful. So maybe you could.
Go ahead. I think we talked about, I think some of the stuff that we've talked about up until now has kind of, pointed to the reason why. And it's because, every time it seems like the black community stands up and it's like, hey, we matter, we're Americans, we deserve the same rights and the same, treatment. it's always shut down, right? It's always, what about this?
Like I was saying, how we get minimized when we tell these our stories.
And they've labeled it now whataboutism or howeverism, you know, is what's going viral now on the internet. But it's always a but or what about, right? So when the Black Lives Matter movement started, and it started as a group, and if you haven't looked it up, you know, you can look it up. The founders started as a group, but now it's still a group, but it's more of a movement because it's a hashtag activism, which has its own issues with, you know, centralized themes and stuff. But that's besides the point. It's just drawing attention to the plights that African Americans have had to endure throughout the history of this country, right? And for somebody to say, come back with all, instead of just listening to you and why, they come back with all lives matter, or, you know, with other things,
which is a direct attack on Black Lives Matter, because no one ever said all lives matter until Black Lives Matter came. And that's a complete direct way to minimize and shut down what we're saying.
Does it feel like they're trying to one up?
100%.
And there've been a bunch of analogies out there that people have thrown out there on the internet, and, you know, they say, like, you know, if you talk about, like, okay, well, breast cancer awareness, you know, what about these cancers? You know, where that's like almost the same thing. It's completely different. It's apples and oranges, but, you know, there's a bunch of analogies out there like that kind of try to explain it. You know, and it's hurtful because it feels like you're not listening when you say, hey, we feel this way and this is why we feel this way. And I understand that somebody in our community, as far as in our profession, I understand why they took offense to it initially. Because there was a lot of things centered around the hatred for police officers, and, you know, and there was a lot of misplaced rage for all police officers, and that's a whole nother topic. You know, we haven't even hit on that stuff yet. Yeah. There's so many things to be talked about with that, but it was like a direct attack on what we were trying to bring attention to. And people have used it kind of like they use the Confederate flag as hate speech or hatred. Some people have used it for that reason, right? So saying all lives matter is almost like when Miguel had the Confederate flag wiped off, you know, in front of him just to show you, you know, to be quiet, you know. So that's kind of how it feels. I mean, in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. And so, well, I'll give you one of those analogies like you're talking about. And we covered this one of the many times you and I have had this conversation. In fact, here in the church. Yeah. So if your house is on fire and it's a full blaze and the fire truck shows up and starts pouring water on everyone else's house, you'd be like, what are you doing? Right? Black lives is that house that's on fire. We're the ones who are on fire and need help right now to get where everyone else already is. So what we're saying is pour the water on us. Of course, if the fire jumps to the house next door and across the street, yeah, of course you're going to get water too. But right now, this house is on fire. This house is the house that needs attention from the fire department. Mm-hmm. So if that makes sense, that's the analogy that I always use when it comes to that.
That's right. Good. And I asked both these guys thousands of questions, and everybody has to kind of wrap their brain around it their own way, because everybody thinks differently and kind of has their own way of figuring things out. And for me, after reading and talking to both these guys and understanding what they've gone through and understanding what a lot of people have gone through, is this world has always kept black people under society, like lower than the white guy, or are not as good or not as equal and can't live up to the same standards and things like that. And that's how society has always treated them. And for me, the way I look at it is, and I've told you both this probably, is they're not saying just their lives matter. They're saying Black Lives Matter too. Black Lives Matter also. Black Lives Matter just as much as you type deal. And that's how I kind of think about it myself. But they're saying it because they're the ones, like he said, under the hot seat now. They're the ones that when things happen, they're not getting justice, or things are getting like, I don't know, swept under the rug and things like that. And they're just trying to say, hey, we're here too. Pay attention to us because we matter and we want to be a part of everybody else type deal. And I don't know if I'm far off or totally wrong, you're spot on, but that's kind of how I kind of think about it and rationalize it. And I think it's easier to understand, for me at least. And the reason why is because I'm a white guy. And like I said, in the beginning, I took offense to it. And same thing, is like, well, I matter. This person matter. Blue lives matter. All that stuff. But then once I realized what it meant, I felt comfortable with even acknowledging it and talking about it and understanding what it means.
And it's one of those things where I can put myself in his place, right? Because the profession that we have, that we share that kind of understanding, is that some people can get offended because of the spark that sparked that movement, that group, was police brutality. So it almost seemed like, or it was initially, in relation to that.
Sure.
People have to understand that now it's morphed into something more than that, right? Mm-hmm. It's morphed into something that, like I alluded to before, is we've always had to stay silent. We've always had to prevent people from feeling uncomfortable. And Miguel can tell you, we've had to dress a certain way. It's not, sometimes we even do it without being told. And I told Jimmy this. I said, the way you're one, these are some of my best friends, right? The way I am with you, I can kind of be myself, but I'm like, sometimes I may change the way I do things around you and not even realize it. But when we're together, we're completely different. And it's not anything, it's not his fault. And it's not that I'm doing it on purpose. It just happens.
Even today, real quick, I was running and I stopped to take a break in between my sprints, and this older white couple came walking my way, and I turned down the music of my headphones because I didn't want them to feel uncomfortable about me being two or three times bigger than these small little white people, and I had my music loud, even though it was in my headphones. We're just almost conditioned to act that way. Think of it this way. We are literally being discriminated against constantly, whether it's at work, which happens, like he talked about. We're discriminated against in our normal lives. And being police officers and being black, we also get it from our families. There is no escape, especially right now. There is zero escape for us. So you talk about holding all that stress on us, right? But we're still conditioned to do things like that, turning down your headphones where they can't even hear your music. So
I know we kind of got off the topic, but going back to the Black Lives Matter movement, right? I say that to say we were almost afraid to even say the phrase, right? To even say that we agree with it.
100%.
Initially, we didn't. We kept silent. We didn't want to tell anybody that we even agreed with it. We said it in private. We said it to people we knew, but it's a shame when you can't even tell your coworkers that, I believe what they're saying because my life does matter. It doesn't say it matters any more than yours, and people feel like it's an attack on them, like saying it makes people feel like maybe being white is bad. No, it's not. You're proud of who you are. I'm proud of who I am. But throughout my life, I've had to tone down who I am. I've had to be afraid to have my hat backwards because of what people are going to think. Like you said, turn down the music in my car because I didn't want people to think of me a certain way. And that's a shame.
Very enlightening.
It's a shame, and that's the thing that people are trying to draw attention to. Is it should not be that way. And some people might say, well, that's your problem that you feel that way. Well, it's not my problem. It's the way that we are in society. It's the way things are built. It's the way we are taught. And it's the fact that we won't have the uncomfortable conversations. So.
Well, and I appreciate all that. I do want to kind of shift into the police officer part of it, because I'm just reading today, because I've been trying to pay attention to this, what's going on. And obviously, what was something that started out as a good intention to bring attention to this, all kinds of people have just taken and run rampant with stuff, which created stuff that is taking attention away from this, whether it's the riots, the businesses being people, looted, all that stuff going on, which isn't what I don't believe that has to do with what the intent was to try to bring attention to this. So now we have police officers who are being hurt, who are being threatened, who are being hit in the hospital. You got hundreds of them across the country. They're scared. Their families are scared. I was reading today of a couple officers that said, I've been doing this for 20 years or whatever, and I'm thinking I got to get out because of fear for my life, for my family, all that. So for you guys, it's got to be, as police officers right now, Maybe Lacey isn't, but we're connected to Olympia, and there's stuff that goes on no matter where you're at. What are your thoughts?
I think a lot of police officers are almost connected in a way, because a lot of us go to the same academy. A lot of us know each other because of training, and I'm very fortunate where I work right now, where I believe our community is awesome and they support us 100%. I'm very fortunate, but my heart spills out there for some of my academy friends that work up in Seattle,
Yeah.
some of my academy friends that are in a different county up in Tacoma, things of that nature. It's very disheartening to see, and my opinion, things I'm seeing is there's people piggybacking off of a great movement and a great reason to be upset and a great reason to protest and speak up, but there's these small groups piggybacking off of them and destructing things and hurting things, and what my fear is though somebody in a small little town is going to be like I said I used to be before, just read the headline and just read the hashtags, and they're going to see that a building burnt down or something got destroyed, and they're automatically going to see is Black Lives Matter did it. The black folk just burned down this church, or I'm just whatever, this building, because they're going to do what I did before I got educated and learned, and it's very upsetting.
Which is a great point, because I was down at those riots in Olympia, and the only black person I really saw down there was me. And we're the ones who are going to get Black Lives Matter, or black people in general are the ones who are going to get blamed for that. And I'm not saying that there weren't in other parts of the country, but speaking on my own county where I'm at, that's where it was. And some of the hateful things these protesters were saying, the only person down there was black.
Yeah.
So in a sense, in my opinion, this movement has sort of been hijacked. People are using, like you said, people are using this movement to push their own agenda, to go out there and cause hate and discontent, because that's just who they are. They're just not good people.
So and then, I'm going to try to refrain from giving my opinion on, like, how headlines are skewed and how messages are skewed, because you can have an image and it can have 3 different angles to it.
Sure.
You can take a still image and you can do that. Messaging is a very powerful thing. And like you said, like in our profession, it's and I was in the military, still in the National Guard, but in our profession, and just like in the military, it's like we work together. It's almost like we are connected more so than our families, right?
It is your second family, right?
And that's the reason why we feel for people in our profession that have to deal with it. I mean, we've had to deal with it. We've had to respond to civil disturbances and stuff. And I think that there's a lot more to be said that can't be like summed up just sitting right here about the actual movement. Like I said, it's so decentralized that anybody can say, hey, I'm supporting this movement, and then go spray paint something or break a window, right? That doesn't mean they're really part of it. Doesn't mean they're even advocating for change. Now, what's not drawing attention to is the people that are sitting down with their city council members, the people that are rallying folks to go and vote and to change their their voice in their local and state governments. There's not enough attention on that, right? The positive thing you do see, though, and the reason why this movement, I think, is like spreading like wildfire, is that you've never seen businesses, like we talked about NASCAR, you never seen businesses and corporations and things like that calling people out for things that they've done. Yes, it has gotten ridiculous in some points, right, where people are getting a little bit too overly sensitive and costing maybe some people their jobs, or they're stepping down from positions because they've said something in the past, maybe out of ignorance. Like we talked about this when we started. Steve, you're gonna stumble. You're not going to say the right thing. Jimmy's gonna stumble. He's not gonna say the right thing, right? We don't fault people for that. And you can't. We had a conversation yesterday in which we talked, right? And Jimmy wrote some things and he wanted me to look at it and tell him my point of view. And I gave him my point of view, talking about certain things and certain perceptions of what he wrote. And we went on a side topic of talking about a news conference. I hope you don't mind me bringing this up. We talked about a news conference, and Jimmy was talking about how this guy was talking, and he's like, man, that guy was like breaking things down, and he was so articulate and like explaining this. And I was like, who is this guy? And he found out he's an attorney, right? And we went on with our conversation, and then we started talking about the stumbling blocks that people have and not realizing things that they say. And I said, hey, Jimmy, let's go back to that conversation we had about this guy. I said, was that guy black? He goes, yeah, he was. I go, so you said he was very articulate and stuff, like it was surprising. He didn't mean it that way, but I had to explain to him how that sounded. I had explained to him how many times I've been told that I'm surprisingly articulate or I'm surprisingly smart. Wow, you're actually really smart. You know, like it's a surprise. Why is that a surprise to anyone? I'm a college educated man. You don't even have to be college educated to sound articulate. You know, that's the issues. Those are some of the issues, some of the symptoms of how we've been, you know, institutionalized to do certain things, you know, in America, right? And that's one of the big reasons why we're sitting here talking about the things we are today.
Right, and that's why I tell these guys, and there's things that, and I won't get into too specific, but there's things that I've learned. My parents were not racist; they were great people, and that's, I think, why I am who I am today. But they would still say little things that were racist, or little things that were inappropriate. I guess that's a good way to say. And I remember them saying these things as I grew up and didn't think there was nothing wrong with it until I was about my 20s. And I was like, wow, you can't say that. And my dad would say some inappropriate things, and we would all laugh it off and think it's funny and stuff. And not until I became an adult realized, wow, you can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I made it a kind of a mental note to myself that I will not repeat those things. My son will never hear me say those things. And hopefully I can break that cycle, and he's going to grow up not knowing any of these things. And I'm lucky, and that's one thing you talked about earlier, is the needle moving and stuff, and how's it doing, and who's going to help fix this. And I'm a real believer with the millennials and the group below, like our children. I'm praying that they're the ones that can finally put a stop to this. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm fortunate. Like, my son spends a week at his house pretty much every summer, and Carson will call him dad for a week.
You're fortunate because you get rid of him for a week?
Yes. But that's what I love about that's what I love is I trust this guy 100%, and I love it that my son's learning something new. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I love that he's with Napoleon, and
which is funny, chasing the little blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid through the theme park, and I'm like, okay,
he said, he took my son to what's it called?
Silverwood.
Silverwood. Oh yeah. And so he has my boy, and he told me everybody was looking at him like he just kidnapped a kid, and he's like, no, promise, he's supposed to be with me, but I'm fortunate that I don't think my son. I don't think he sees color. Yeah. And it's cool because I on purpose have asked him to describe somebody who's talking about, and he says, "Oh, the kid in the green shirt with the blue shoes or whatever," and he was the only black kid in the crowd, and he didn't say the black kid. It would have been so easy, and I don't know, it just made me proud. And I'm like, I hope that can push to all our children right now, mm-hmm. and maybe our kids and the next generation, even though they drive us crazy, can somehow make a difference.
Yeah.
So
I know my kids they're all adults. They're in their 30s. And my son's 28 or 29. But my daughter was saying,
it's okay. He still loves you. Fine.
He's helping us out.
Is that the guy that has a motorcycle stuck in front of your house?
Yeah, well, it's for sale, by the way, if anybody wants to buy it.
I think it's a planner, so if you want to put
it's a Honda CBR 600 or something.
It's going to need some work.
Just a wash. Yeah. So my daughter saying, we didn't know there was such thing as racism, because in our home, we taught our kids that everybody's the same no matter what in life. Mm-hmm. Never said anything derogatory, even in private, about anything. So for our kids, it's like, whoa, once they got out in the real world, in a sense, because they were homeschooled and different things. So it wasn't the exposure till they got out and saw it for themselves. Like, oh, there is a problem. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. So hopefully raising our kids and grandkids, that will change.
He would cry when he'd have to leave my house for Thanksgiving with all my nieces and nephews.
My son told me, and this is the honest truth, that he thinks Miguel would be a better father than me. And that broke my heart. And I go, why? You know what he said? Because he will play PS4 with me. He will let me eat candy, and I can drink soda. So if anybody wants to know how to be a good father, those
Soda, PS4, and candy, and then you send them back home with a sugar rush.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So kind of wrapping this thing up, because I know we've been doing this for a while, and obviously there's so much more we can talk about, as you mentioned, and maybe we'll have the opportunity to do that. But don't give up on the white community in the sense of we want to.
But we don't have a choice, because you guys are the ones who are going to rectify
I know
this.
that's what I'm saying.
100%.
Because there's a scripture in the Bible that it's Galatians 6:9, and it talks about don't get tired of doing good, because if you hang in there and be persistent about it, you will get the reward and the blessing you're looking for in that process. So that's what we want to continue to do good, because I know for you guys are probably at the point it's like, man, I'm tired of having to explain this thing and talk about it. You guys need to come and help us do this. We're there, but don't give up on us, is what I'm saying.
100%.
You know,
You're right. We are tired of explaining it, but if we don't, are we part of the problem? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
This is the third time we've had this at this church. Well, at least you and I. So I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I mean, that's where we're at.
That's really important.
Yeah. I guess one last question. We don't have to belabor this, but just how can the community be a part of bridging this issue to come together as a community? Is there that you can tell people that are watching?
I think we've talked about a lot of it, right? We've talked about getting over feeling uncomfortable, getting over being offended by people bringing things up, right? And you said something really important. You're like, don't give up on us, right? Like, when I got up today, I was telling my wife, and I'll be honest, right? I said, because I was all about this talk, right? When you and I talked, and I talked to Miguel and Jimmy about it. And when I got up today, I said, you know what? I really don't even feel like going. And it's like, why should I have to go and explain myself and constantly like explain and like belabor this to people and try to beat it into their skulls, because some of it is just like, can you not see this?
Because you've lived it for...
Yeah. But then I told myself, things like this, if anything, it frees my heart, right? My heart weighs heavy because I care about my coworkers and my associates, my friends, my family. I care about those people, right? They're people that are very important to me. And for me to feel as mentally and physically exhausted as I have the past couple of weeks, because our hearts weigh heavy, all of us, right? Things like this, like us to sit here and joke, and talk light, and then, talk about some serious issues, it can be done. And this is a start. You only have to have one conversation. You don't have to make a global change. Nobody's asking anyone to lift up the world.
No,
they're just asking you to have a conversation with one person. If you have a conversation with one person, you've done something to move the needle. You've done something to bring about change, right? And so for me, this kind of lightens my heart, and it makes me feel good that there are things that people can do within their community. Would this small thing help, all of Washington State? No. It
Maybe.
won't. It's possible, right? It's possible.
Yeah.
But if I can do one thing to help the people in my community understand that how we feel as African Americans and how we feel as the community and how we love one another, despite our differences, that's important to me, and that's the reason why I'm here.
Yeah, appreciate that.
If I could say one thing, it would be to just be a good person. You know when things are right, you know when things are wrong. How many people who are white have been in a situation where they've been in a group of other white people and someone said a racist joke but you didn't say anything? That can't happen. That's no longer excusable. If this needle, we keep using the needle, if the needle's ever going to be moved, that can't continue to go on. You can't continue to put your head in the sand like an ostrich. You've got to have these conversations and make uncomfortable become comfortable.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Anything in regard to that, or you're...
I think people just need to ask questions. Ask questions, but I gotta honest, because what I love about these guys, I can ask them anything, and they'll give me an honest answer. And I just need to ask for myself and be honest. Does it, and these are questions people are scared to ask, does it make you mad when someone calls you an African American? Or can I just call you an American? I'm really curious because your family's been here forever. I mean, they don't call me a European American.
Right. I'm black.
That's what I was saying.
So I mean,
I don't know.
That's personal preference.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know because I've actually said African American to someone before, and he goes, "I'm black.
So
I'm not from Africa." So it's like, I don't know. That's why.
So that's some people's personal preference, and people have some strong opinions about it. Some people don't. It's just. Yeah,
I'd rather be called that than the alternative.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
black,
I get
but-
it, and that's why. I mean,
It's a good question.
but that's what we call starting a conversation.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like
Ask that person.
you asked, and that's what I wanted to say. And like, kind of finish my last thing is I kind of challenge everybody who's watching this is find someone that's your friend that's a different color than you and have a conversation with them and ask these personal questions and have a dialogue open and do like we do. We sit down and say, hey, I'm not trying to offend you. I don't know. I just don't know. So I need you to tell
Which
me
is
the
always
truth.
weird when you say that to me because we've been friends for over 20 years.
I still don't know. I'm learning. It's very complicated. This is a complicated situation.
It's funny when you say that stuff to me.
Well, but he sure knows how to make me feel uncomfortable, though. That's fun.
Well, I wanted to just say something, and we'll wrap up here in a minute. But for me, I'm a pastor. I'm a Christian, and I believe the Bible and what it says, and I believe God, the Creator of the universe. And in the Bible, when it says He created human beings in His image, that's every human being that's ever thought of, ever been created, or ever will be created is in His image. And I think about, what does that mean in His image? An image is something that's a reflection of who He is, right? And so we're all in God's image created, and He created us all the same. And so I like that, and I think that's something that's important to live by. And the Bible talks so much about loving God and loving people, and those are the two greatest commandments. And so if we can grab a hold of that and understand who our Creator is and love Him because he created us in His image, which is a good thing. And then if we love people, because there's also a scripture in, I think, Romans 12:21, it talks about not repaying evil with evil. I know Martin Luther King obviously used that too as well, but that's important, that we love conquers evil, or light will conquer darkness. So if we focus on, instead of trying to get back at somebody that we thought did something bad to us with something bad,
Right.
but we do it and say, hey, I'm going to love you instead. My heart has always been to love people, and maybe to a fault that sometimes, like, maybe it comes back on me, it's like, well, that guy's weird or whatever. But you guys have known me for several years, and I'm who I am, whether I'm at home or here at church or whatever. And so I appreciate this opportunity, and in all sincerity, I do want to say this to you guys, and it is a bit emotional for me, because when I was thinking about this today, and it did make me emotional when I was getting ready for this. And I just want to say, on behalf of the church that I pastor, I do want to ask you guys for forgiveness for what's gone on, and how we've missed this stuff, and we've mistreated, or we've said bad things and stuff, and it honestly affects me. So,
But you don't have to ask us for forgiveness at all. You don't have to apologize for what's gone on. You don't have to apologize for being white. None of that stuff.
I'm not apologizing for being white, but I just think that for me, because I believe in that whole process of, hey, if you've done something and you recognize it, say, I'm sorry. And will you please forgive me in that regard? And I say that in all sincerity, and I get what you're saying, but still, it's something that it's important and very meaningful, and it's freeing, because when you guys say, yeah, man, we forgive you, it doesn't mean that I've got all this baggage that all of a sudden
White guilt.
yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But I just feel like because it makes me emotional to think about all this and the importance of what we're talking about right now.
Right.
And I'm in with you guys. I mean, honestly, I remember as a police officer, whatever I'm doing, and I understand the whole family dynamic of that as an officer, but man, I would take a bullet for you guys in a second. And that's the honest to God's truth. And I know that would be the case for you guys and so forth, but I just think, man, we're all created in God's image, and He has a great plan for all of us. So I just think we're doing something good here, and we're going to stick to it. We're going to keep this thing going. We're going to keep that. So I just had to say that, and you're welcome to respond to that if you want to, and then we'll.
I will only forgive you if there is brisket involved. Other than that,
Well, I'll tell you what, Jimmy makes pretty good brisket too, and I know we've shared this together. I know we've.
I'm willing to take brisket from anybody
whatever.
who wants to apologize for the way I've been treated.
Well, I will take that as a yes,
As a yes.
yes, in that regard. So
No.
yeah.
And the second thing is, if we're ever in a situation where someone pulls a gun, I would use you as a shield. So
I know you will.
I don't want you forgetting what you just said about taking a bullet.
Well,
I'm not trying to die.
So make sure you're on call at all times.
Exactly.
You just know to call the chaplain. It might be a little too late though. Anyway,
Well,
Thank you, guys.
The only question I have is, when are you going to shave your beard?
I'm going to actually.
Not if Jane has anything to do with it. She loves that.
The only
thing.
reason I have my beard is
Oh,
because
yeah.
my wife likes it, but I'm getting rid of it. I promise. It's just a matter of when it's going to be. Pretty soon, because I don't really like it.
Not according to Jane. She's like,
Whatever Mama says.
Okay,
I'm like,
George likes it. Maybe I don't know.
All
Yeah.
right.
Anyway, so
sorry you had to hear that.
any last minute things? I mean,
No, just for people to just be a good person.
Okay.
It's real simple. There's no rocket science to this. Just be a good person and don't be afraid to say the wrong things. Don't apologize for being white. Don't apologize for things you can't control. Just be a good person.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you guys, and we just again. Do you want to mention this? That we please come up with questions because you probably will have them. Email them to me, steve@citylifewa.com. You can email me your questions. We will take those questions and answer them. Hopefully we'll get together next Wednesday night on the 17th and field some of those questions live on our Facebook Live. Anyway, so definitely appreciate you guys again for doing this. It means a lot to me for sure. And anyway, God bless everybody. Have a good time.
In the presence of my enemies, when the storm is crashing down on me, I will trust in what I cannot see. I wait for you, I wait for you. You can part the violent seas, you can reach the depths of me. I know nothing is impossible. I know every chain is breakable. I know on Christ the solid rock I stand. And I am waiting at the water's edge, holding steadfast to your promises. And even though I'm not there yet, I trust in you. I trust in you. You can part the violent seas. You can reach the depths of me. I know than Jesus' blood and righteousness. When darkness seems to hide his face, I rest on his unchanging